The way they tried to destroy you was disgusting, but the way you handled it was unforgettable. That's what they can't admit out loud. You were thrown into a pit, smeared with lies, humiliated in ways that would have made a weaker person snap. And yet, you stood up, wiped the dirt off, and kept your silence like a blade, sharp, still, and dangerous. That silence, that's what's haunting them, because no reaction is more terrifying than grace under fire. They expected you to scream, to fight, to break down, but you simply outclassed the chaos. You walked through filth without it sticking to you, and now the very same people who tried to stain your name can't stop whispering about how clean you came out. It's like watching someone throw mud at a mirror and get blinded by their own reflection. What they hurled at you came flying back tenfold, not because you sought revenge, but because the universe doesn't lose track of energy. Here's a fact. Studies in behavioral psychology show that people are more intimidated by those who remain calm in conflict than by those who lash out. It triggers something deep, a recognition of power that isn't loud, but lethal. You didn't need to raise your voice. Your silence screamed louder than their accusations ever could. And now, behind closed doors, they're wondering how you did it. And more importantly, why their tactics failed so miserably. And thank you, chosen one. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing the like and subscribe button to help spread this message to more souls. It's the responsibility of all of us to spread the light. And thank you, chosen one, for being a part of this mission. You are part of a force, and you're not here by accident. Now let's get back to what really matters, you. See, there's a reason people are so impressed, and it's not just because you kept your cool, it's because you showed a level of emotional discipline and intelligence most can only pretend to have. You didn't just stay calm, you made them question their entire approach to life. What you demonstrated wasn't passive, it was precise. You handled a disgusting situation like a surgeon, cutting only what needed to be cut, saying only what needed to be said, and leaving no trace of bitterness behind. That's rare, that's power, and it's got people rattled in a way they didn't expect. Because let's be honest, they set the trap and you disarmed it with a smile. They threw stones and you built a fortress. They expected tears and you showed teeth. Not in aggression, but in victory. And what's wild is that now, some of them are admiring you from the shadows. They can't stop watching your moves, because what you just pulled off, that wasn't survival, that was transformation. You didn't just get through it, you evolved. People expected you to lose control. That's the part they don't talk about. They wanted to see you explode, to make a fool of yourself, to hand them the satisfaction of saying, "See, told you they were unstable, but you gave them nothing." And that nothing, it shook them, because it exposed everything. It showed who really had the power. And it wasn't the loudest voice in the room. It was the one who chose silence with strength, the one who could have destroyed them, but didn't. And let's not forget, these weren't just random strangers testing your patience. Some of the people who tried to take you down were the ones closest to you, people you once trusted, people you once protected. But when the moment came, they showed their true face. And so did you, except yours wasn't twisted with hate or revenge. Yours was composed, focused, resilient, and that's why everyone's so stunned right now. Because you didn't just handle the situation, you elevated through it. The world doesn't often reward grace in the moment. It praises chaos, drama, reaction. But then someone like you comes along, someone who doesn't bite back, but bites through the nonsense. Someone who chooses peace, not because they're weak, but because they're wise. And when that kind of person walks through a storm without letting the rain touch them, the whole room watches. That's what happened with you. That's why they're impressed. Because even in the most disgusting, unjust situation, you refuse to lose yourself. They were watching. Don't forget that. Even the ones who pretended not to care, even the ones who laughed when it looked like you were done, they were studying you, and what they saw wasn't just someone keeping it together. They saw someone they couldn't manipulate, someone they couldn't provoke, someone whose peace was too expensive to be purchased with petty games. Now, some of them are uncomfortable around you, not because you harmed them, but because you didn't. That's the part that eats away at them, the fact that you had every reason to retaliate, and you still chose integrity. That kind of choice leaves a mark. It exposes guilt. It creates reflection. And while they're busy re-watching the footage of what they did, the world is slowly starting to see you, not as a victim, but as a force. And here's the kicker. You didn't have to explain yourself. You let the truth speak. You let time do the talking. And now the disgusting situation they thought would break you has become the very reason people are inspired by you. You turned their mess into your message, their trap into your training, their insult into your image. This is just the beginning. The same ones who doubted you will soon act like they always believed in you. The ones who whispered lies will pretend they were rooting for you all along. That's how it always goes. But deep down, they'll never forget how you handled what they tried to bury you in. Because you didn't just survive the dirt, you grew through it. You became the lesson they never saw coming. So stay sharp, chosen one. The universe has already taken note of how you moved, and so has the world. What comes next will make even more jaws drop, not because of what was done to you, but because of what you refused to become. Keep walking, keep glowing, and never forget, they're impressed because you didn't fold, you rose, and that's what makes you dangerous. And thank you, chosen one, for standing tall and showing the world how real strength looks in the face of filth. Now let's break this down step by step, because what comes next will not only confirm your power, it'll remind you why people are still in shock over how you handled that disgusting situation. Trust me, if you've ever been betrayed, humiliated, or tested in silence, you'll feel every word in your soul. So stay with me, don't scroll away. Drop the number 777 in the comments if you know your silence made more noise than their drama ever could. And if you feel led, bless this message with a super thanks to keep this truth moving across the globe. Whether it's 1 cent or 100, it keeps this mission alive, because chosen ones like you deserve to hear what others are afraid to say out loud. Now take a breath, lock in, and let's get into the first reason why they're secretly blown away by the way you rose above their dirt and made it look effortless. Number 1. You didn't just survive the dirt, you turned it into their mirror. They threw mud at you, but it was their own reflection that ended up filthy. That's the part they can't stand. The more they tried to drag your name through the dirt, the clearer it became who they really were. You didn't just survive the disgusting situation, you flipped it. You made their hate work against them. You exposed their weakness without saying a single word. And now they're sitting in silence, watching you rise, realizing too late that the person they tried to humiliate became the lesson they needed most. See, the real power wasn't in fighting back. It was in letting their noise collapse under its own weight. You didn't rush to defend yourself because you understood something most people never do. When the truth is on your side, time becomes your loudest witness. You didn't react. You refined. You didn't chase validation. You became evidence. And that's why they're still whispering your name, still checking your life from the shadows. Still replaying what happened, trying to understand how you stayed so calm while their entire plan fell apart in public. You turned their chaos into a case study in emotional intelligence. It's almost scientific. According to research from Harvard, silence during conflict doesn't just de-escalate, it transfers control. The person who says less controls more, and that's exactly what you did. You starved their drama of oxygen until it suffocated. They needed you to explode so they could say, "See? They're just as bad." But instead you stayed composed, watching their schemes rot in daylight. You didn't just avoid their traps, you made them trip over their own lies. Ever notice how clean water exposes dirt the moment it's poured over it? That's you. Your calm was clarity, your grace was glare. The moment you stayed silent, everything false about them became visible. They wanted to stain you, but ended up revealing their own contamination. And that's why they can't stand your name now, because every time it's mentioned, it reminds them of their failure to destroy someone who never even swung back. You might have asked yourself, why didn't I just defend myself? Why didn't I clap back? But here's the truth, because you didn't need to. You were never playing their game. You were mastering it. They were emotional gamblers, betting everything on your reaction. And when you gave them nothing, they lost it all. That's what psychological warfare looks like, winning by staying still. Now they're out there pretending like nothing happened, but don't be fooled. They remember every second of how that situation flipped on them. They remember your calm face when they expected tears. They remember your composure when they were shaking. And they remember that moment when they realized you were built for storms they couldn't even stand in. The truth is, you didn't just outlast the filth. You made it obvious that you were never meant to belong in it. You became the reflection they can't escape. Every rumor they started only polished your image further. Every insult they spread only proved your silence had more weight than their entire narrative. And now, they're living with the aftermath of their own exposure. Still dirty, still bitter, still trying to figure out how you walked through sewage and came out shining. That's why the universe rewards you, chosen one, because you didn't let filth define you. You let it reveal them. You didn't play their game. You rewrote the rules. And now they're forced to watch, knowing deep down. You didn't just endure the dirt. You made it your mirror, and it showed them everything they tried to hide. Number 2, you claimed the throne without poisoning the crown. You didn't cheat to win, and that's what's destroying them inside. In a world obsessed with shortcuts, where betrayal is strategy and fakeness is currency, you stood alone. No tricks, no puppets, no smear campaigns. You didn't twist knives behind backs or smile while plotting someone's downfall. You didn't need to. You walked your path with your head up and your hands clean, and still somehow you're the one in the spotlight. That's not just rare. It's revolutionary, and it's got people shaking behind the same masks they used to mock you with. Imagine trying to run someone over in a race, only to realize they were never even running with you. They were building their own track. That's what you did. You didn't compete in the game. You outgrew it. You didn't push anyone out of position to get where you are. You simply kept showing up with integrity over and over until the weight of your character moved you forward like gravity itself. And that's what people can't understand or replicate. They ask themselves, how are they rising without playing dirty? How are they gaining respect without demanding it? But they already know the answer. It's because you never needed to steal power. You were already carrying it. Your energy spoke before your words did. Your presence silenced rooms before you even stepped into them. You were a threat, not because you were trying to be, but because you represented something they couldn't fake: authenticity. The loudest ones chase status. The real ones attract it without saying a word. And chosen one, you've done just that. You didn't get loud, you got real. While others were building illusions, you were building yourself. They were so busy fabricating their image that they didn't notice you crafting your foundation. Quiet, solid, unshakable. And now that the storm has come, guess who's still standing while their whole facade crumbles? Imagine this: A room full of people dressed in gold, glittering with lies, arrogance, and envy. And then you walk in, no glitter, no performance, just presence. And suddenly, their gold starts to look like cheap foil. That's what your power does. It exposes, not because you try to, but because your authenticity makes their performance unbearable. They thought you had to be loud to matter. They thought you had to manipulate to move forward. They thought success was something you had to fight dirty for. But you proved that real power doesn't come from stealing light. It comes from being the light. You didn't have to dim anyone else. And yet, you shine. That contradiction is killing them softly. Here's a brutal truth most people will never admit. It's easier to hate someone who cheats to win, but it's devastating to watch someone win fairly when you know you didn't. And that's why so many of them are stuck in this bitter silence. They can't discredit you, not without exposing how much they compromised just to stay visible. Now, the same ones who dismissed you are recycling your words like they invented them. The same ones who laughed at you in private are quoting you in public. And the same ones who tried to bury you under gossip are now trying to climb up your presence for relevance. They hated that you never begged to belong, that you never bowed for attention, but now they crave your approval in ways they'd never admit. You didn't network, you worked. You didn't ask for power. You earned it, and because of that, your presence doesn't just impress, it convicts. It reminds people of what they gave up chasing clout. It reminds them of who they used to be before they sold out. And that reflection, it's heavy. You might ask, why are they acting different now? Why are they trying to be friendly? Because respect is unavoidable when it's real. They might not like you, but they can't deny you, because your elevation wasn't manufactured. It was inevitable. And deep down, they know it. They know you weren't handed anything. They saw the rejection, the silence, the years of being overlooked, and yet you still showed up, still delivered, still became undeniable. You didn't just walk into the room, you became the reason the room changed. And the best part, you never had to betray your soul to do it. That's why your story hits different. That's why your power feels dangerous, because it's not borrowed and it's not dependent on applause. It's real, and that's the one thing they can't copy, steal, or outshine. Imagine this, two people standing at the top of a mountain. One climbed every inch, blistered, bruised, disciplined. The other took the helicopter. When the storm comes, who survives? The one who knows the terrain. That's you. You weren't flown in. You climbed, one bloody step at a time. And now, when the winds hit and the masks fall off, you're the one standing firm. Not because you were lucky, but because you were ready. They underestimated how powerful it is when someone leads without ego, without deception, without neediness. But now they're learning painfully. And you're leading just by existing in truth. You became the evidence that you don't have to lie, cheat, or sell yourself short to become someone worth respecting. That's why they're so impressed and so uncomfortable, because you shattered every rule they lived by. You rose without hurting anyone. You succeeded without screaming for attention. You built your lane and made it impossible to ignore. And now, even your silence speaks louder than their performances. So, chosen one, don't question your path. Don't let their confusion make you doubt your clarity. You didn't steal power. You awakened it. You didn't ask for the crown. You became undeniable until it fit. You earned everything they thought you'd need to fake. And that's why they're watching. That's why they're shifting. That's why, even in silence, you're leading the room. You're not just rising, you're redefining what it means to be powerful, and they're finally realizing this wasn't luck, this was legacy. Number 3, you walked through fire and didn't smell like smoke. They threw trash, hoping you'd rot with it, but all they did was expose how clean you really are. That's the part they'll never admit. You saw the filth. You heard the whispers, felt the betrayal, saw the fake smiles stretch wider than the lies behind them, and still you didn't let it change your nature. That's not weakness, that's next-level power, because anyone can match energy. But chosen ones, they master it. Most people become what they're around. You pour someone into poison long enough, they either drown or drink it. But not you. You didn't sip bitterness when they served it. You didn't roll around in their drama hoping to get the last word. You stayed standing, soaked in truth, but dry from damage. That's why they can't stop talking. Because deep down, they know they wouldn't have handled it like you did. You had every right to expose them. You had proof, you had ammo, and you had witnesses. But you chose peace over pettiness. You chose to carry yourself with weight, not noise. And when people ask, why didn't you just snap back? The answer is simple, because you're not them. You weren't built to survive off revenge. You were built to walk away with your soul still intact. They were so busy trying to stain you, they never noticed your light made their dirt more visible. That's what stings them now. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was exposure. You didn't need to shout, you let their behavior speak volumes. And now your presence forces people to confront what they've buried, because you represent what they tried to destroy but couldn't touch. You were in the middle of emotional sewage and walked out without the stench. That kind of purity. It can't be faked, it's earned. And that's why they remember you, not just for what you survived, but for how beautifully you walked through the fire without carrying the smoke. Number 4, you flipped the trap into a throne without throwing a single punch. They built a stage to shame you, and you turned it into your spotlight. That's what haunts them now. Every snare they set, every whisper they spread, every fake scene they acted out, all of it was supposed to push you into a meltdown. They weren't just provoking you for fun, they were engineering your destruction. One wrong move from you, and they had a narrative. One emotional slip, and they'd paint you as unstable, angry, dangerous, irrational. But you never gave them that pleasure. You saw the strings, you saw the bait, and you walked right past it like royalty stepping over crumbs. Imagine this, a lion surrounded by hunters, all armed and waiting for it to charge. But instead, the lion just stares, unbothered, knowing it doesn't need to prove it's a lion to anyone. That was you. They were ready for chaos, but you served composure. They wanted retaliation, but you gave them silence. And now they're left with empty scripts, confused and bitter that their performance didn't land. They needed your anger to validate their lies, but you buried their lies in your discipline. That's what stings the most. While they were rehearsing drama, you were writing legacy. They built their identity on your downfall, and you never showed up to fall. Instead, you grew. You used the drama as data. The pain became your blueprint. You let their fire fuel your vision, and somehow, without stooping, without fighting, without even addressing them directly, you rose so high they can't breathe where you are now. What's wild is, they still don't understand how they lost. They had everything set up, the false friends, the rumors, the moments of sabotage, but you didn't play checkers with them. You were playing chess in silence. And now, people aren't just watching you. They're following you. You didn't climb over anyone. You climbed through everything. You let your progress silence their projection, and that's a power they'll never have, because they only move through destruction. You move through purpose. You turned their storm into structure. Their plot became your platform. And the best part, you never had to touch them. You let your presence rewrite the entire script. Number 5, you let the work speak while they choked on their words. You didn't announce your worth. You made the world feel it. That's what they can't recover from. They were waiting for you to explain yourself, to justify your shine, to convince them you were worth respecting. They wanted you on defense, begging to be seen. But you never bowed, never pleaded, never auditioned for a role you already owned. You didn't show up to prove your value. You showed up living it. And that's what broke them in silence. Imagine this: a diamond doesn't argue with glass. It just keeps shining until the comparison embarrasses itself. That's exactly what you did. You didn't waste your breath trying to change minds, committed to misunderstanding you. You simply stayed consistent, quietly, powerfully. You let your evolution outshine their expectation. While they were hoping for your breakdown, you were out there building breakthroughs. While they were gossiping, you were growing. And that's why you're dangerous, because you don't perform for approval. You exist with purpose. Real confidence doesn't scream, it radiates. And your presence does that without trying. The truth is, they didn't underestimate you because you lacked power. They underestimated you because you didn't need validation to use it. You never begged to sit at their tables. You built your own and made it look royal. Every move you made in silence became a statement. Every boundary you set became a mirror that showed them what self-worth really looks like. Some might ask, but didn't it hurt being misunderstood? Of course it did, but you learned something they never could. Pain doesn't shrink you unless you let it. You turned rejection into redirection. You didn't clap back, you climbed higher. You let your progress become your public statement, and when results started speaking louder than rumors, the same mouths that doubted you started choking on their own narrative. Now, they're pretending they always saw your potential. They didn't. They saw it and tried to bury it. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't die when ignored. It multiplies in silence. You didn't just survive their doubt. You let it sharpen your edge, and now your existence is proof that you don't need to prove anything. You are the proof, breathing, glowing, undeniable. Number 6. You let their fire die out while you built in silence. When they screamed for attention, you handed them silence, and that's what broke them. You saw the setup, the pokes, the smears, the subtle digs masked as jokes, the lies whispered loud enough to stain your name. Every move they made was a test, a trap disguised as drama. They weren't brave, they were starving, starving for your reaction, starving for fuel. And you gave them nothing but air. You stood still while they danced in desperation. See, people think silence is surrender, but silence in the hands of the wise, that's warfare. That's how you won. You didn't try to correct every lie, didn't chase down every rumor, didn't give them a show to clap for. You made them starve off their own schemes. You don't win by fighting shadows, you win by turning off the spotlight. And that's exactly what you did. Imagine a parasite with no host. It dies. That was their drama. It needed your energy to survive. They needed you emotional, angry, reactive, because once you lash out, they get to play victim. That was the real goal all along. But you never gave them the scene they scripted. You let them drown in their performance while you kept your peace on lock. You might have wondered, should I say something? Should I clear this up? But you already knew your silence says more than your defense ever could, because the truth doesn't chase applause, and you don't owe anyone access to your energy just because they're loud. You kept your circle tight, your lips tighter, and your soul clean. Now their noise has faded. The chaos has collapsed. The smear campaign turned into self-destruction. And you're still here, still rising, because real power isn't proven through confrontation. It's sustained through composure. You didn't starve them out of fear. You starved them out of dominance. That's not retreat. That's control, and control, chosen one, is something they never had, but you mastered in silence. Number 7, you chose control over chaos, and that's what crushed them. Real power is when you could destroy someone, but you choose not to. That's the line that separates leaders from loose cannons, and you, chosen one, walked that line like a warrior in silence. They saw your composure and thought you were scared. They mistook your silence for softness, your restraint for weakness. What they never realized is that it took more strength to stay quiet than it ever would have taken to erupt. You had receipts, you had truth locked, loaded, and ready to rip the mask off every fake face in the room. But you didn't swing, you didn't clap back, you didn't need to, because some weapons are too sacred to waste on clowns. You saw the trap, felt the heat rising in your chest, and still said, "This isn't worth my crown." That decision, that refusal to stoop, shook them more than any meltdown ever could. Imagine this, a bomb with the power to level everything, and someone choosing to dismantle it instead of detonate it. That was you. You didn't just walk away from destruction, you absorbed it and still kept your soul intact. While they were hoping to bait you into chaos, you were quietly choosing peace like it was armor. Why didn't you just expose them? Because you knew real exposure doesn't need a megaphone, it just needs time. And now, that silence you left behind is doing what your words never had to. It's haunting them. Because without the back and forth, without the distractions, all that's left is their behavior echoing in that dead air you gave them. You weren't quiet because you were okay. You were quiet because you were done. Done babysitting egos. Done dancing in dysfunction. Done giving free access to people who mistake your silence for surrender. But here's the twist. Your silence was your sword. Your calm was your confrontation. Your refusal to engage became the loudest statement in the room. And now they know, rage would have been expected, but restraint showed them who really had the power, and it wasn't them, it was you. Number 8, you reflected the truth they spent years running from. You didn't expose them with words, you exposed them by existing. That's the sting they'll never admit. You didn't clap back, you didn't spill the tea, and you didn't need a mic to shake the room. You just kept showing up in your truth, calm, consistent, untouchable, and that alone made their entire performance unravel. While they were scheming to tear you apart, you became the one thing they couldn't handle, a mirror. See, manipulators thrive in distortion. They twist facts, project wounds, and rewrite stories to make themselves the hero. But you brought clarity. Just by standing still, you exposed their chaos. Just by staying solid, you made their shakiness scream. And without ever raising your voice, you reflected the rot they tried to hide under fake confidence, filtered personas, and half-truths. Imagine someone dressing in layers to hide a wound, only to stand next to a person who's fully healed. That contrast alone is unbearable. That was you. Your wholeness, even if it came with scars, made their pretending unbearable. Why are they so bothered by you? Because your peace screams at their guilt. Your authenticity forces them to face the fact that they've been wearing a mask so long, they forgot what real looks like. You didn't crack, you didn't collapse, and that stability became confrontation. Not loud, but lethal. Every time you stayed calm, it exposed how chaotic they really were. Every time you walked with grace, it made their gossip look petty. Every time you chose truth over performance, their lies started to collapse in on themselves. And now, they're stuck explaining why they're still bitter, still broken, while you keep evolving. The mirror doesn't lie, and it doesn't apologize either. You became that mirror, and what they saw staring back at them wasn't just their reflection, it was a reminder that the person they tried to break became the proof that their games never worked. You didn't just walk away, you left them face to face with everything they didn't want to see. And that's a punishment no revenge could ever top. Number 9. You moved like the universe had its eyes on every step. When no one was watching, you still did what was right, and that's why everything's aligning for you now. They thought the darkness would protect them, that their whispers in back rooms, their smirks behind your back, their lies coated in fake kindness would stay buried. But you knew better. You moved like someone who understood the bigger game. While they were hiding behind masks, you were building character in silence, knowing one thing for certain: nothing hidden stays hidden forever. You didn't match their filth because you weren't just thinking about the moment, you were thinking about the consequences. You knew every action echoes, even if no one claps. You didn't take the bait because you weren't performing for people. You were aligning with something bigger than revenge. Your dignity wasn't for show, it was your foundation. But why didn't you expose them? Because you didn't have to. You understood the deeper law, that energy never forgets. What you put out, you get back. And while they were laughing like the game was theirs, you stayed focused, like the test was real. They saw it as a chance to hurt you. You saw it as a test of who you were becoming. And that difference, that's everything. You didn't just keep your mouth shut, you kept your soul clean. You chose restraint not because you were weak, but because you didn't want to walk through life dragging the dirt of their actions behind you. You knew that even if no one saw the moment, the universe did. You knew karma isn't just a word, it's a return address. Imagine playing chess while your opponent thinks it's a bar fight. That's how calculated your grace was. You let them burn themselves with their own fire, while you stacked integrity like gold bricks. And now, that energy is circling back, slowly, quietly, brutally. The same people who thought they got away with it are watching things fall apart in places they thought were safe. You weren't just surviving betrayal, you were passing an invisible exam. You didn't fake strength, you chose truth. And now your silence is turning into favor, your character into influence, your pain into undeniable evidence that you moved like the universe was watching. And it was. Number 10. You took the fire and forged a new identity. You didn't just make it out alive, you made it out legendary. That's what shocks them. You weren't supposed to rise from that wreckage with your spirit intact. You were supposed to crawl out broken, bitter, and begging for sympathy. That's the narrative they counted on. But instead, you walked out with fire in your eyes and clarity in your steps. You didn't just survive the chaos, you transformed inside of it. They thought they were building a trap. What they really built was your training ground, the betrayal, your classroom, the heartbreak, your awakening. While most would have let the pain poison them, you let it purify you. You didn't escape the storm, you became the stillness inside of it. And that's what they'll never understand. But weren't you hurt? Of course, but you didn't let the pain harden you. You let it refine you. You faced the fire, felt every burn, and came out tempered, like steel. You didn't run from the discomfort. You sat with it. You turned it over. And in doing so, you carved out a new version of yourself that doesn't just carry scars. It carries direction. Imagine this, a shattered mirror reforged into a blade. That's you. What broke you became the weapon you now wield with grace. You didn't numb the pain, you named it. You didn't suppress the past, you studied it. You flipped the narrative so hard that the very thing meant to end you became the reason people now look up to you. You didn't let the story break you, you rewrote the ending. And that's why your presence is different now. You don't walk in with wounds, you walk in with wisdom. Your silence is louder, your energy heavier. Because you carry the weight of someone who has faced destruction and built design from it. You didn't escape that situation, you redefined what it meant. And now, even the ones who tried to destroy you have no choice but to respect the force they accidentally helped create. Number 11. You let their lies rot while you rose in silence. You didn't fight the lie, you let it starve on its own timeline. That's what crushed them. You didn't go online to plead your case. You didn't chase down ears poisoned with gossip. You didn't post your side, clap back, or leak receipts. You knew something they didn't. Truth doesn't run, it waits. You understood that the loudest thing you could say was nothing. And while they scrambled to keep their false version alive, you let it die in slow motion. Lies need maintenance. They need new fuel, fresh drama, constant updates to survive. But you stayed still, unmoved, focused. You let the gossip swirl like smoke, because you knew smoke always clears. You watched their stories age like spoiled milk. No need to scream when you're playing the long game. And now, the timeline doesn't match. The characters don't line up, and the crowd that once believed every word is backing away, embarrassed they ever fell for it. But didn't it hurt to be lied about? Of course, but you chose patience over panic. You knew the lie would collapse under its own weight, and it did, one crack at a time. The people who once whispered with confidence now look confused because the math ain't mathing anymore. And the best part? You didn't lift a finger to make it happen. Imagine watching a building made of paper go up in flames while you sit with clean hands and clear vision. That was you. You let the lie catch fire under the heat of time and truth. You didn't just outlive the rumor, you outclassed it. No drama, no defense, just dignity. Truth doesn't panic, it waits. And that's exactly what you did. And now, with every lie that falls apart, your silence becomes louder. The people who tried to ruin you with words are now watching their own credibility collapse. You didn't react, you allowed reality to reveal. That's not just maturity, that's mastery. And it's exactly why your name is clearing itself, without you ever having to say a word. Number 12. You walked away from the circus, and they've been performing alone ever since. You didn't beg to be believed, and that's what made you undeniable. While they were out there putting on a show, crying for attention, manipulating emotions with rehearsed victimhood, you did the one thing they never expected. You said nothing. No social media breakdown, no dramatic speech, no look at what they did to me parade. You refused to audition for public sympathy, and that silence, it roared. They were banking on drama, the kind that earns likes, sympathy, and shallow validation. That's the addiction they feed. But you weren't trying to win over the audience. You weren't performing for applause. You had something far more valuable than approval, self-respect. You didn't sell your piece for temporary pity. You didn't bend your truth to fit their storyline. And while they stood center stage acting broken, you stepped back and let time do the casting. Imagine walking out of a room mid-argument and locking the door behind you, not out of defeat, but out of power. That was you. They thought your silence meant guilt, but it meant control. You weren't silenced. You were simply done entertaining clowns. Why didn't you defend yourself? Because you didn't need to. You knew the court of public opinion changes its verdict with every headline. You weren't interested in momentary applause. You were investing in timeless alignment. You were building truth, not performing pain. Now the dust has settled, the crowd has lost interest in their act, the spotlight's burned out, and all that remains is you, solid, focused, and untouched by the noise. Your life became your answer, your growth became your evidence, and your refusal to play their game exposed everything they tried to hide. You didn't win the crowd, you outlasted the performance, and now the silence they once mocked has become the standard. You never wanted to be worshipped, you just refused to be used. And that decision crowned you with something applause could never give: real power. Number 14. You stayed clean in a rigged game and still took the crown. They said you had to get dirty to win. You proved them wrong by staying pure and rising anyway. From day one they doubted you, not because you lacked strength, but because you refused to stoop. You didn't join their whisper circles. You didn't shake fake hands or smile through hidden agendas. You didn't trade your soul for a seat at their crooked table, and in their world that made you the underdog, the one too soft, too honest, too naive to survive the game. But here's what they didn't count on: integrity doesn't fold, it outlasts. While they were scheming for shortcuts, you were building your foundation brick by honest brick. You let them laugh, you let them talk, you let them believe the lie that goodness can't win in a cutthroat world. And then you did the unthinkable. You won anyway. Imagine a storm of corruption swirling around you, and you walk through it without a single drop landing on your soul. That's what they witnessed. You didn't need manipulation to rise. You didn't need noise to get noticed. Your calm became power. Your boundaries became law. Your refusal to play dirty made the entire game glitch. How did they do it without compromising? That's what they're whispering now, because if you proved that clean hands can build empires, then their excuses crumble. They can no longer justify becoming what they once hated. You shattered the narrative. You exposed the myth that darkness is the only route to power. While they walked away jaded, hardened, and morally bankrupt, you walked away whole, still you, still rooted, still glowing. And that's why they're studying you now. The same ones who mocked you are watching closely, trying to reverse engineer your grace. You didn't just win in a dirty game. You changed the rules by refusing to get dirty in the first place. And that, chosen one, is a kind of power they'll never understand. You didn't just survive the system, you rose above it. And you did it with clean hands, a clear conscience, and a soul they couldn't touch. So listen, chosen one. You handled what was meant to break you with grace, power, and intelligence, and now the same people who doubted you are left speechless. Chosen one, your silence spoke louder than their lies, and your strength redefined the game. If this message reminded you of who you are, press that like button if you haven't already. And if you're not part of our family yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join the movement. This is your season, your spotlight, and your story, and we're just getting started.